I'm going to talk about Warren County's fee structure and collect mechanism, the fee uses, the origin and development of the fee, feedback, and then recommendations. So our fee structure, as they said before, is a two-tiered structure. It is on the water meter. So there is a different fee for residential versus non-residential. So this is everything in Warren County, excluding the city of Bowling Green. It's $4 a month for residential and $10 a month for non-residential. They said at the time, I was not around back then, but they said at the time it was based on different impervious surfaces, non-residential being higher, that type of thing. So the fees are collected by the utilities. The majority of them are done by the Warren County Water District, but there are some in the BGMU Service District, and there are no exemptions and no waivers. Technically, there are exemptions if you're, in a fancy house with irrigation. The irrigation meter, we usually take that off. We don't charge you twice. And all of the enforcement is done by us with our local code enforcement board. We have the ability to write citations, issue NOVs, that type of thing, do fines. The use of fees, so they created a special sewer district. And so this is straight from it says, quote, solely for the purposes as directed by the Plum Springs Warren County Joint Water Agency. So it's fairly vague, but if you read the agency creation ordinance, it is specifically for implementing all mandates imposed by the Phase 2 Stormwater Management Program. So it's fairly broad in terms of what we can use it for stormwater, but it limits fiscal court or anybody else trying to use the funds for road improvements or park improvements or anything like that. So it stays mostly within our agency. So the origins, at the time, to my knowledge, the city and the county were trying to work together. And as often happens when politicians politic, things went their separate ways. I believe the city, and Matt can absolutely correct me, I think they did a 0.2% increase in a tax bill of some type. And so the county judge and county attorney at the time were looking into what the options were, whether it was a tax bill increase or a utility or some other option. They looked across the country, but were limited by what KRS allowed. And so they decided to do a special sewer district, but they couldn't do it alone. You have to have another county or a Class 6 city in order to partner with you in order to create a special sewer district. So Plum Springs, which is adjacent to the city of Bowling Green and within Warren County, was also required to do these stormwater, the unfunded mandate. And so the county partnered with Plum Springs to create this agency, which is why our name is super weird and long, Plum Springs, Warren County Joint Sewer Water, whatever it goes, a lot of letters. At the time, there was very little feedback for the community, and that was partially because of the timeline. I'll talk about that on the next slide, but we got a lot of complaints after the fee was assessed, and we still will get some. Andrew will get calls asking what this $4 fee on their water bill is every month. And we do still have people that won't pay, and we usually wait till it gets to be a few months before we send them a letter and explain what it's for. Timeline. So this is a really quick turnaround. The agency was created in April of 2007, and the first and second readings for both Warren County and Plum Springs were done in April as well. The fee creation ordinance was right after that. It was implemented by the end of May. And then, as always, enforcement comes later when you realize you don't have a way to enforce these rules you just implemented. So that was done in September, where they implemented penalties for non-payment of the fee. So the interesting thing about this timeline is it was right after an election in the fall. And so that was Mike Buchanan's tendency to do large, potentially politically controversial things right after an election in hopes that they forget about it in 2 years. And it seems to have worked. And then our recommendations, you need buy-in from strong political leaders. Technically, Jack Wright, who was the former manager for Stormwater, was hired at the time, but he wasn't actually involved in the creation of the agency or the fee. It was done almost exclusively by our judge executive and county attorney. Amy Milliken did all the research, and between the two of them, they came up with all the ideas. So without that strong political leadership, I know that I've heard so many stories of this KSA community who are struggling to get buy-in from those political leaders who are the ones that make that happen. But if you can figure that out, this is absolutely the way to go. A clear and explainable budget is also important to justify why you need the funds, why the fee is what it is, why you set the amount. and what the differences are between residential and commercial. And then, like I said, timing. Right after that election, they're a little. I mean, I'm no politician, but they tend to. It was his second or third. I think it was his third term. So he was a little bit more stable and was comfortable implementing this type of fee. And they chose to not put it on the tax bill and went with the water meters instead, because they didn't want to go to a full page for the property tax. And that is the most random way I've heard a politician talk about not choosing to do a method of something. So it was just an interesting tidbit. And that is it, unless I've got questions. I know that the question about operations was for Danville, but just to clarify, all of Warren County's stormwater budget is paid for, including all of the salaries and benefits, everything relating to our stormwater program and staff is paid for by this fee. And as we're growing, one of the fastest growing areas, and as we grow, our revenue grows.